Hey everyone, hope you had a great weekend. It is Monday, October 17th, 2 p.m. Eastern, and we've had an extremely volatile last 3 trading days in the stock market world. Of course, crypto has been subject to that volatility as well, but crypto, it's been the last 5 trading days after a fairly slow weekend overall. We're going to look at a bunch of stuff. We're going to look at the macro picture, and then we'll zoom in and look at some of these altcoins and what we're looking for in the short term to potentially help us gauge whether the tight range that we're currently trading within is going to break bull or bear. It's too hot for a winter robe. So we got the NASDAQ up right now, and I'm viewing the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 futures chart as just an equilibrium, just straight up tightening range after a lot of volatility. It was all bulls Thursday, it was all bears on Friday, and now it's been all bulls today. Just complete whiplash action, just in the sense that it was full on complete control in each of the differing directions each day. So the question that I have for the next 24 hours is, are we about to set a lower high and form an equilibrium, or are we going to break resistance and confirm bull short-term strength? Keeping in mind that if we get a bull break, I will zoom out to the daily time frame on the NASDAQ and just be viewing anything under 11,669 as just a daily lower high. So bigger picture, I'm reminding myself we're still in a daily downtrend regardless of what happens in the short term, but I'm finding a lot of clarity on this short-term pattern. And as we know, if we're going to set a 4-hour lower high, we need to lose our 15-minute uptrend. So we've been riding 15-minute EMA 12. We've got a clear 15-minute uptrend all day today. We just hit a new high of the day. Looks like we're lacking some follow-through, so that now has me watching for the potential of a rising wedge. But we have to see weakness on the 15-minute time frame for any indication that our 4-hour lower high is being set. So 4-hour and 15-minute are my guides. And whenever I find a time frame where that's clearly the time frame that I'm watching, I stick with those time frames until a break happens, and then I start to zoom out and look for the clarity on other time frames. But I know right now on this NASDAQ setup, I don't need anything but the 15-minute and the 4-hour. Forgot to mention, on Friday, I did a Twitter Spaces where I pretty much just talked for an hour about my trading journey, going through everything with stocks and crypto and all that. So posting that in the chat room, and I'll post a link in the description of this video, but worth checking out if you are unfamiliar. A lot of people gave a lot of positive feedback in terms of just, their own motivation after listening to that. So check it out if you didn't. So we know what the NASDAQ is doing, and we know what we're watching for in the short term, and we're keeping an eye on the 15-minute EMA 12 with 2 hours left in the trading day. The dollar is giving us a tightening daily range. So just a tightening lower high, and now we're watching anything under 110.05 to be a higher low. But I've been saying many times, you've probably heard it, I'm looking at the weekly EMA 12 on the dollar, and when it's lost, that will show me a shift is taking place on this chart. And I can say it'll be a shift for the first time in 8 months. There's also another shift that has now taken place, something that is worth noting. This is not as notable to me as a loss of weekly EMA 12, but I can look at this and say the dollar just set a weekly lower high. And that's, when's the last time the dollar set a weekly lower high? And your answer is? Your answer is a very long time. It hasn't happened since this bull run started. So if we're going to say, what's different? Are things changing or are things staying the same? We can say this is the first time the dollar has set a weekly lower high in 10 plus months. That's notable. An aggressive bull is going to act on that. An aggressive bull is going to be establishing longer term stock, crypto, commodity positions based off of that. A more patient bull is going to wait for further dollar weakness, because it's entirely possible that we hold support and then break this pattern bullish eventually. So again, before you determine what signals you're looking for to act on a longer term time frame, or to give you an indication that we might be getting a longer term bounce taking place, you need to determine whether you want to be aggressive or conservative, because that's going to dictate the signals that you're going off of. It's going to dictate the time frames that you're acting on. So the dollar is very weak here in the short term, potentially an hourly bear flag. But it's all about the daily for me. So Bitcoin is giving us a 12-hour equilibrium. And we knew that this was the most likely scenario after a certain point. When did we know to scout for an equilibrium? After we see a raging bull move and a pullback of 50% retracement, I then say, scout the equilibrium. Scout the higher low. We have tons of space for a 12-hour higher low to form. Then scout the lower high, because we have a lot of space for the 12-hour lower high to form. So we can see that as the NASDAQ is testing the high of the day, Bitcoin's not testing the high of the day. So there's a little bit of relative weakness there. It's a 30-minute tightening range, and I'm watching for an indication that a 12-hour lower high is being set. Because if the NASDAQ's going to give us a 4-hour equilibrium, then we're going to be looking for Bitcoin to likely give us the 12-hour lower high and continued tightening range here. When we're looking, just want to show an example of trade setup. So how do we find clarity with all these different time frames and everything else that's going on? So I'm on the 12-hour charts for clarity. I'm expecting a 12-hour higher low versus the low of yesterday. This was Friday talking about Thursday, but there's no signs of it yet. So how do we find those signs? We zoom in. And I want to see signs that the hourly chart is reversing if I'm going to be looking for a 12-hour higher low to be set. So I then zoom in from there, and I'm watching all of Saturday and Sunday's trading action. And I can notice that bulls aren't proving anything. Hourly EMA 12 rejection. Here's a bear break with zero follow through. Here is a bear break with zero follow through. After the second bear break, we can then observe the hourly bear breaks have been lacking follow through. Bulls are watching for a potential falling wedge, because by definition, a falling wedge is bear breaks that lack follow through. So I recognize on the shorter term time frame bear exhaustion. Okay, that's increasing probabilities that a 12-hour higher low is shaping up. And then it did. So now we can look in the other way and say, okay, I'm looking on the hourly for signs that a 12-hour lower high is shaping up. I see a little bit of relative weakness based, or I should say compared to the broader stock market. And I can say if Bitcoin loses the hourly uptrend by breaking 19.4 support and loses hourly EMA 12 in the process, our 12-hour lower high is very likely being set. So aggressive bears are scouting a 12-hour lower high. Aggressive bulls are already in a position or looking to add on another 12-hour higher low. With where we stand in Bitcoin overall, we can say bulls have done a good job defending 17.5 support. I don't think anybody can argue against that. We can also say bulls have not proven anything to us on offense in Bitcoin in over a month. And I don't think anyone would argue with that either. We have a tightening range in a lot of places. We just looked at the NASDAQ 4-hour tightening range, the Bitcoin 12-hour, the dollar daily tightening range. There's a lot of them out there which tell me, obviously, we've seen a lot of volatility in markets Thursday, Friday, and today, but this tells me that more volatility is coming, that we're going to see a larger spike in volatility on the bigger picture timeframes. And in my opinion, we need to be getting prepared for that for end of October, start of November. And so to prepare for that, what do? Well, you either wait for the break and you act on a break, or you're positioning for it within this tightening range. Bulls are building their positions or already have their positions, and they've got their stop loss set. Same with bears. There have been multiple spikes where bears are grabbing positions and hoping for a flush of 17.5 to see another leg down. And we're going to see a lot of participants wrong when these ranges break. I have a bit of a bull lean. I have a bull lean because the dollar is setting a weekly lower high, because the Bitcoin bulls have been doing a great job of defending support, because I'm looking for all of the short-term fundamental reaction to CPI and all of that to be, in the rearview mirror for now, at least for the next week or two. And the one thing we're looking at now is stock market earnings. So the stock market has already started heavy earnings season here, and this week is a big one with Tesla, keep an eye out on Tesla earnings, just because you never know. Maybe they did something else with Bitcoin worth watching. I believe that's it's either tomorrow or Wednesday. So Wednesday right after hours, keep an eye on that. Could be a reaction. But you got Tesla, Netflix, and then next week you got all the big tech names. So the broader stock market is going to be greatly impacted by tech earnings within the next week or two, within the next 2 weeks. So that's something we need to be keeping an eye on as well. How is Bitcoin responding related to that? Whoops. Sweetie Pants wants to go outside. That's what my ceiling looks like. All right. So keeping an eye on earnings, Bitcoin tightening range. I have a bit of a bull lean. I'm not very confident. If I was confident, I would have a large position, but I'm not. So I am patiently watching and observing. And if we see a bull break with a volume spike, I will likely grab a longer term position looking for a monthly bounce. And essentially it would be a lot of names are watching for monthly higher lows. Bitcoin doesn't have a great view of it, but let's look at Matic. Matic has been a lead bull. Look at the Matic monthly time frame. So what Matic is attempting to do is form a monthly higher low compared to our recent lows and then confirm a monthly uptrend. And so that's a possibility that's on the table. And over the last couple of months in the crypto space, I've been talking about how there's a possible scenario where even if Bitcoin breaks to a lower low under 17.5, I'm looking for a lot of these altcoins to form a higher low still. And that may not happen if Bitcoin obviously doesn't break 17.5, but there's a lot of space on these altcoins for monthly higher lows, more so than we have on Bitcoin. Ethereum is the same as Bitcoin, very similar, I should say. We got closer to resistance here, but it is still within a tightening 12-hour range. The hourly is still an uptrend. If we confirm an hourly downtrend, little head and shoulders here, if we confirm an hourly downtrend, our 12-hour lower high is set, and we then look for a 12-hour higher low compared to 1263. ETH BTC is not doing a thing over the last month. We can look at this, or I guess 3 weeks. We can look at this and say that Ethereum is doing the same thing as Bitcoin as long as this is sideways. But keep an eye on this break, and it's going to break, in my opinion, when we get all these tightening ranges that I just talked about breaking as well. So one scenario is Bitcoin breaks bull, altcoins quickly follow along, and altcoins outpace Bitcoin percentage-wise, and ETH BTC breaks bull as well for the first time since the merge. Again, this is a daily downtrend since the merge, and that's not changing yet, but we're watching for signs that it's changing. If we can't break daily lower highs on this chart, then Ethereum is going to remain weaker than Bitcoin. Another scenario is if crypto breaks bear and altcoins drop faster than Bitcoin, then ETH BTC drops to fresh lows and stays in a daily downtrend. But again, look at this chart and look back and say, when is the last time that ETH BTC has been this tight for a month of trading? And it hasn't happened in a long time. And you can find that in a lot of crypto. You know, if I look at Ethereum and say, when's the last time we had 5 weeks within this percentage range? I have to go back to pre-2020 breakout to find this tighter range. And again, anytime you're going to find a comparable range this tight in the history of the last 5 years, it's going to be followed by a very significant break in one direction or the other. So obviously it can break in either direction, but it's important to, this is, you know, like a lot of newer traders will listen to what I'm saying right now and say, well, you're not picking a direction. I gave a little bit of a bull lean, but if you're not confident in direction, what does it matter? It matters because we know opportunity is coming as traders. We know that volume and volatility are coming. And so we don't have to position before that. Maybe it just means I'm going to trade crypto 5 times as often as I've traded it in the last 2 months once this break takes place, because we will be entering a period from going of contained price to price discovery and a lot of volatility and opportunity that goes along with that. So you don't have to predict the direction. You can just mentally prepare, you know, maybe I'm going to focus the week that the break takes place solely on trading and take advantage of that opportunity and volume and volatility. But again, we know it's coming. QNT, I'm watching for a top. I'm watching for a daily volume climax to be set. Look at the volume here. We've got 5 hours to go, almost 6 hours to go, and we have the highest volume in a very long time. And a big upper wick. An aggressive bear is scouting an hourly lower high to be the result of the next bounce, because anything under 225 is an hourly lower high. And if we then confirm an hourly downtrend, we will have daily consolidation shaping up. 5-minute oversold conditions were just used up as our back burner. They've been nice bounces, 10% bounce here, 5% bounce there. But I'm watching for a top. Every lead bull eventually becomes a lead bear. We just need to zoom in and watch for it. So QNT BTC, watching for, and here was just a little bit of a clue. Look at QNT BTC top here versus the high and compared to the US dollar pairing. US dollar pairing got a lot closer. It was 1.5% away from a resistance break. The BTC pairing was showing us a little bit of relative weakness, as it didn't even get within 3% of that level. Long story short, an aggressive bear is watching for an hourly lower high on this next bounce, and keeping an eye out for the potential that we top out on QNT, keeping in mind we're just going to look for a daily higher low. A bull is going to wait for first hourly oversold conditions to scout a daily higher low with tons of space for it to form. So I'm only looking for short-term consolidation to result from this climax top. I'm not saying the run's over or anything like that. I'm just looking for bigger picture consolidation after a very significant bull run. So we looked at Matic. I had a couple lines drawn on Matic just as visual guides. So we're breaking this downtrend resistance line. And on the BTC pairing, I had support and resistance. And we're trying to break above that as well. But Matic is definitely still a lead bull overall. And you can see the size of this move. You know, if you're feeling FOMO, like, oh man, I want a Matic position, you're hoping that we reject from 86 cents, and you're then going to be scouting a daily higher low with tons of space for it to form. But Matic's keeping up this strength here, and keeping an eye on the BTC pairing, which is trying to confirm a weekly, or trying to continue the weekly uptrend, I should say. We've set weekly higher lows every time we've consolidated here. And again, it's just another little clue, because Matic USD has been breaking weekly supports. But the BTC pairing is not trading hand in hand with the US dollar pairing during weakness. It's showing us relative strength, which is a tally in favor of bulls. So Matic is definitely a top bull to be watching. QNT is still definitely a top bull to be watching. We're going to be watching for an hourly back burner on QNT. XRP has weakened a little bit recently, just in the sense that we don't have a 12-hour higher low yet. Well, I take that back. We do now. We didn't this morning. The vast majority of altcoins had formed 12-hour higher lows and were heading back to resistance, and XRP still had not done so yet. So XRP has a wider range here and a lot of space for a 12-hour lower high, and worth keeping an eye on for this tightening range. Here's XRP BTC. And the question is, are we about to confirm a daily downtrend on XRP BTC to start weekly consolidation? To have this relative bull from the last month plus start to fade a bit. So keeping an eye on that. And we're also watching our weaker names like Mana. You know, Mana USD got a super stack daily oversold signal, and it's marked a temporary bottom, but we need to see a confirmed daily uptrend result from this bounce if it's going to be meaningful. And again, just keeping an eye on some of the weaker coins to see if they're going to show any relative strength. So I'm watching some of the recently stronger coins and watching for signs of relative weakness, but also want to have a few of the weaker coins and watching for signs of potential relative strength. And we don't have much right now. We need those daily uptrends. But that's just how my mind's working in terms of wanting to keep tabs on, you know, who's gaining and who's weakening, essentially. But in the end, it all boils down to Bitcoin for me. And it may be another, week, and maybe next week until we break. So going to remain patient, but you better believe that when it is the break that I'm talking about, that we're going to see volume that is very high. I mean, we're going to be looking for, just using Coinbase as an example here, but if the average 20-day volume is 27,000 coins, I'm going to be looking for at least double that for it to be the move. So keep an eye, set volume alerts. Keep an eye on volume to tell us that the move is for real. NASDAQ Bull still holding on pretty well. 15 minutes still strong with EMA 12. If we don't lose 15-minute EMA 12, we're not going to set a 4-hour lower high. So that's step number one if we're looking for any kind of shift into weakness. All right, I'm reading the chat room now. How would I choose an altcoin to trade based on the size of the trade in terms of market cap and volume? So I personally have a minimum. I need $5 million daily volume for me to look at something. If I'm looking to be high risk, high reward, and I'm trading with smaller capital, but I want to see, 50% gains, then I have less of a criteria in that regard, because I'm looking for, the lower cap names for that potential opportunity. But for me personally, I need $5 million volume and I need no gaps. If I look at a chart and it has gaps on the 5-minute time frame, it's not liquid enough for me to be trading. It's not active enough for me to be trading. Thanks, Justin. Where do I go for my general news headlines that may affect markets? I've got my Fidelity Active Trader Pro broker. It pops up alerts and news. And then I'm in a chat room with the chart guys of, 1,000, 1,100 people who all have different news sources and all share that information. For example, today, cannabis news. And the sector pops on volume. And as soon as someone posts the news, got to give a proper shout out. So Mark posted the news. Cory Booker says blah, blah, blah. The news is a dud. It's nothing new. So I short. And CGC gave a very nice short opportunity because these pops are for shorting if the news is not meaningful. So 5% pullback there. I didn't get all of it. Took me a little bit to get a good position. I stopped out initially, but ended up with a green trade because someone else shared the news and I acted on that information. So again, it's a team game. If I can have 2 people sharing news with me or 1,000 people sharing news with me, you want the 1,000 people. And of course, Twitter as well. I curate my Twitter feed by unfollowing people that are not, if people are talking about stuff that I just don't care about at all. When I'm on Twitter, I care about trading and I care about, if you're someone that I follow and you're sharing stuff about your personal life, that's great. That's fine. But if you're talking about, George Floyd constantly, or if you're talking about the left and the right and I can't stand it. And so I block you because you're not giving me any information that is for trading. I'm here to trade on Twitter. And so we have to curate our feed to be useful for us. My Twitter is a tool. And it is a tool because every day I am tweaking it to keep it a tool. Using the Trader Pro alerts, making it easier to get and walk away. Good, awesome. Glad to hear Scottish. That's the point. Feel like you're not missing anything. And again, set those abnormal volume alerts, especially for Bitcoin, on maybe like the hourly time frame. Because if you get an abnormal hourly volume spike, it's worth paying attention to for the possibility that a daily move is taking place. I don't want to do a daily volume alert because by the time that comes in, it's going to be too late. In 2021, I was looking at megaphone patterns quite a bit. Am I still reviewing them? Yes, absolutely. And I've gotten much better at them and much more comfortable at recognizing them. And I've taken some trades off of them. So a rising wedge is when bull breaks lack follow through. And so I started getting comfortable trading rising wedges. And a megaphone is essentially the same thing. You know, you'll top out, you'll break support with no follow through, you'll break resistance with no follow through. So it's just a different version of a wedge for me because the trading style is similar in how I position for them. One thing I'm not good at yet is anticipating that a megaphone is going to form before it's already developed. But once you get a few touches on either end, and I can say that's clearly a megaphone, then I'm comfortable trading them. Like with an equilibrium, I'm comfortable scouting the third point. Like with Bitcoin, comfortable that Bitcoin's going to form a 12-hour high or low, which would be, here's point 1, second point, third point. I'm comfortable with that third point. I'm not comfortable with the third point of the megaphone, assuming that it's going to be a bear break with no follow through. I don't have enough observation of that pattern. 84 likes. Let's get that to 100, please. Appreciate you all pumping the chat room and trying to get them. Is the dollar the most important chart to watch right now? I'd say it's the second most important chart. The most important chart is the instrument you're trading, and the dollar is the second most important chart. I think that enough people, myself included, the more I talk about the dollar, the more hundreds of people are going to be watching the dollar very closely. It's become a self-fulfilling prophecy where nobody cared about the dollar, 2 years ago or whenever ago. And the more people that talk about it, the more people care about it, and the more people that are going to act on it. If right now, everybody was talking about the weekly EMA 12, losing the weekly EMA 12 would see a notable reaction because everybody would act on that. And I certainly don't kid myself and think that, my influence on the dollar's weekly EMA 12 is significant, but I do know that enough people are talking about the dollar that it's going to be used for a signal to long markets more so. Here's a statement. I would suggest that the dollar is about to be a more significant factor for more people in markets than ever in history. And I say that because of social media and the attention that it's getting in this macro environment. I would say that, retail traders care more about the dollar right now than at any other point in history in terms of trading. And so when you have all of that attention because everybody's talking about it, it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy where people are going to act when it does certain things. If we see dollar weakness, people are going to be more comfortable longing stocks, commodities, and crypto, myself included. You got it, Fungible. Thanks for tuning in. Do I trade SPY or QQQ? Both. Depends on what I'm looking for and depends on what's going on. If I'm looking for an hourly lower high, I'm going to short the weaker of the two. If I'm looking for a bounce, I'm going to long the stronger of the two. Eyeing Bitcoin 19.4. So 19.4 doesn't matter to me on Bitcoin. Doesn't mean it shouldn't matter to you, but just for me, I'm just keeping it real simple. I care about these 3 levels until one of them breaks. And soon, if we set this 12-hour lower high, we'll have a 4th level. SPY is testing 15-minute EMA 12, trying to keep that uptrend going. Close to shaping up a futures 4-hour lower high. We'll see. How many trading strategies do I have? I have no idea how to answer that. 47? They all work with each other. They're not very distinct. I mean, stair-step strategy is different than a back burner strategy, is different than trading an equilibrium, is different than trading a wedge. So I'd probably say there's maybe 5 or 6 main ones. Well, I use head and shoulder. I mean, I'd say probably like 6 major patterns and strategies. How can I anticipate the lack of follow through of an uptrend? Volume is a clue. You want to see increasing bull volume on a break of resistance. And short-term trends. If a daily level breaks resistance and goes straight into a loss of the hourly uptrend, red flag, there's no follow through there. You need to break the daily resistance, keep the shorter term uptrends going to see follow through. So if I see a break of a level and it lasts one candle and starts consolidating right after that candle, that's a lack of follow through. Use the time frames and how they relate to each other. An hourly bull break will have a lack of follow through if we lose the 5-minute uptrend shortly thereafter. Is ARC a leader in risk on indicator? I prefer IWM. IWM is the Russell 2000. It's 2,000 of the smaller growth companies, high risk, high reward names. I'd rather look at 12 or 2,000 companies versus however many ARC holdings there are. I'm sure it's just a few dozen. So for me, IWM is the risk on indicator. And I believe it bottomed first. So IWM bottomed, let's see if it did, June 16th, and then a higher low and a higher low. No, SPY was the same. The only difference is SPY broke a support where IWM did not. So I take it back. Not much notable difference between the two. Not looking at any individual stock or crypto at the moment. I will in just a moment. I'm watching some dividend plays for long-term IRA. I'm watching INTC because it's the most oversold it's ever been. And even if I'm just looking for a monthly bounce, it's got a nice 5% whatever dividend. Big Ched's posted about it recently, but even if it's just, a monthly bear flag, there's a potential 30% bounce there. So that has my interest. NEE is a utility with dividends that has my interest if this monthly base of support can hold. But in the end, it's always easiest for me to just long some SPY, which pays dividends as well, but easier for me to just track one thing. And I'm probably gonna, next daily consolidation from here in the broader market, I may try a bottom fish just to add to my IRA. If we break with some follow through, I'll stop out. If we confirm the daily trend change, I'll have a larger IRA position. I definitely want to deploy more capital. I have a lot of cash sitting in that IRA. And I want to take advantage of this fear if I'm looking decades out. But I already put in a couple orders for this year. So being a little bit more patient from here. Next trip, I'm going to Halloween to get weird. It's a music festival in Florida, but I'm not going to be filming anything. All right, what do we got? Poly X. So again, I look at this name and there's just, what in the world is going on? I don't want to trade. I don't want anything to do with anything that looks like this, personally. If the chart can do that, I don't want to trade it. Maybe that's just the exchange, but yeah, it's just very illiquid. All right, Binance a bit better. Looks like it just listed on Binance. Stair steps. So we're looking for an hourly high or low, anything above 239. And then we're going to look for an hourly low or high, anything under 519. Look at that, best adult dating site. So watch for a 5-minute trend change back to the bulls on Poly X for an hourly high or low to try and be set. Got to break 3, 4, 6 for a 5-minute uptrend. Hourly high or low is set. We then watch the 5-minute uptrend for clues that the hourly low or high is being set. As we're going to anticipate, that's the most likely scenario. Loss of the 5-minute uptrend will be the first indication that the hourly lower high is shaping up. Uni, wall of resistance at 641. Bears are clearly top fishing that level. 632 and 631 key supports. So pretty much 631 to 641. That's all we care about. Break 631, 4-hour consolidation. Nah, not yet. It'll be just hourly consolidation at that point. We'll be shaping up. We'll scout an hourly high or low, anything above 611. And it's the same 12-hour time frame here where we're watching anything under 653 is a 12-hour lower high. It's holding on better than Bitcoin right now, but it is still the same setup, just a stronger version of the same setup. And it's also coming from, similar enough. So same setup, just a little bit stronger on the 12-hour. Do I look at pre-market highs and lows for entry levels on a possible trade? It depends more and more these days because I'm using the futures chart more and more. And futures pivots, highs and lows are hit in extended hours often. So for example, the S&P 500 futures resistance from the end of last week happened at 8 a.m. And so for SPY, it's 371.20. And I care about that level a lot more than the high of regular trading hours. How do you check the volume of a coin? So it's just I just estimate. It's just a rough guess, which is all that I need. But if I look at Ethereum here, well, let's do an easy one. Ape, so average 20-day volume, which is this orange line here. It shows me 3.8 million shares traded a day on average, or coins traded a day. All right, so let's just call it 4 million. 4 million times 450 is, 18 million, maybe? $18 million a day? Just a rough guess. That's all I need. It's either going to tell me it's 5 million or it's 40 million, and that's, all I need to know. And that's how I do stocks as well. What is MARA? Speaking of which, let's talk about MARA, but what's MARA's daily volume today? All right, we got 16 million shares traded. Range of the day is wide. Let's take the midway point of that range, 1130. So 1130 times 16 million, 176 million shares traded. Or I should say $176 million traded. Again, very rough, but that's how I do it. So MARA is giving us a nice tightening range. Yet another, anything under 1379 is a lower high. If we set a lower high, we're then going to look for the higher low because the size of this bounce is notable. Tightening range to be watching on MARA. Really strong today. MARA divided by QQQ shows us that it's in a tightening range as well. And compared, what about Riot? Why don't I care about Riot? Because MARA divided by Riot shows me that MARA is the strongest it's been comparative to Riot in 10 months. So if I'm looking bullish in crypto stocks, I'm looking at MARA and not Riot because it's stronger. What about Coin? MARA divided by Coin. It is stronger than it's been. Well, not as much. Coin is definitely holding on just fine here. So less clear. If someone says, I'm choosing Coin rather than MARA, I'd say, okay. But if you say you're choosing Riot over MARA, I'm saying, but you got this and it's stronger and But MARA is the stock that I watch in terms of crypto, and it has been seeing a bit of relative strength. And MARA is like these alts that are looking for monthly higher lows. Anything above 520 is a monthly higher low. We can drop 50% and still be holding that monthly support from here. So for me, a monthly higher low is the most likely scenario on MARA. Just like it is on, Ethereum. For me, a monthly, Ethereum got fairly, still, that's a long way to go. Matic, a lot of these names, monthly higher low is most likely for me. Thanks, Okang man. Do I ever trade Adam and Eve pattern? I usually view them just as equilibriums, tightening ranges. They form a little bit different. Let's see if I can draw one. So we bottom, we bounce, we set a lower high, and then we round bottom. Man, why? It's because I'm zoomed in that's so terrible. I don't have shaky hands like that, I promise. So it's pretty much a high where we're coming from, the low, lower high, higher low. I mean, to me, it's like an equilibrium. It just forms a little bit slower and with a rounded bottom. But when I see it, my brain goes equilibrium. Tightening range, higher lows and lower highs. And then it's the break of resistance that confirms that pattern. All right, I gotta go. Got a stock live stream in a half hour. I appreciate you all tuning in. Again, remember what we're watching. We're watching the hourly to play off of the 12-hour. Are we going to set a 12-hour lower high? For stock futures, it's the 15-minute and the 4-hour. We know volume and volatility is coming to markets. And the fact that we've seen so much volume and volatility over the last few days, and it's still not the big one that I'm looking for, is definitely notable. But sometime in the next couple of weeks, I expect that I'll be on one of this live streams saying, here it is. Establish those game plans in advance. If you are not in any positions, what would make you look long? What would make you look short? If you are in positions, set your stop levels. And let's see how we break. Do good things. Check out that Twitter Spaces. If people like them, I'll do more, is essentially what it boils down to.